Hello, I hope you can hear me. I am just getting set up here and I'll get started in just a minute. If you're wanting to craft along today, you will need 7 pieces of 8.5 by 11 cardstock. I would recommend a sturdy cardstock, maybe 100-pound, but 110-pound cover stock is probably too sturdy if you are going to be making an album and covering both sides of each page with designer series cardstock. Hi, it's just us. I'm just going to give it another minute. I tried to use the set link again and it had a hard time. Let me bring over this one. See if you can see that. The mini album base that I'm going to be making today is based off of this guy. Oh, cool. So I'll just randomly flip through this until somebody else joins us. If no one joins us, I'm just going to craft by myself. So this is an album that I made, and I put the playlist in the description box. It is made from this designer cardstock that I really love called Garden of Books by P13. And it has images that I really like in it, and I haven't used it for anything, even though I think I've had it done for a year now. Which is crazy, because I've been making YouTube videos for over a year now. But I'll just do a little flip through here. Hi, Tanya. Thanks for joining. What time is it where you are? Are you having a hard time sleeping? It has all of these really fun book nook kind of comfy chair images in it. And plants. And this was the first time that I put even like the easiest interactive elements into a mini album. That's like a real mini album and not just one made of tags or made of envelopes or paper bags. I did a bunch of paper bag albums when I first started making mini albums, but I really, really love this. It's got a little waterfall in it. And then this got a couch. And then the specialty, it has a special line of paper that has all of these doors in it, which look like the Minte paper doors. So these open up as well. And this one opens this way. So this album has, I think, 7 pages. 8 pages, plus the front and back. And so what I did is I went ahead and I made it easier. I made the base mostly the same. Looks like it might be a little bigger, but I also made the construction easier. It does have a crazy gusset binding, but I just going to go through it step by step. I have a playlist down below that includes how to make the gusset binding in one of the videos, but I'll also show it tonight and then put it together. I forgot to put magnets, but I definitely, on this one, but you can see the magnets here. I used like a number of the teeny magnets here, and it still clicks together, but it easily falls. And then this one, I wasn't sure. I was going to put magnets, and then when I realized that I wanted to, I already covered this, but I'll fix that with a sticker or something, or maybe not even cover it. Hi, Chris. Thanks for joining. So this guy and this guy are pretty much the same, except this one has just 4 pages. And 4 pages I think are plenty because I am putting in some pockets. I have a tag pocket in the middle, and these pages are made so that they are top loading. So you can put top loading tags in these. Did I do it upside down? I didn't cut notches, so yeah. You can put a tag or anything really in here. And that's that. I did put 2 little areas back here to put either journaling or photo mats. And these are actually little books, but these pockets are so tight that I don't think I'm going to be able to cover these little books with paper all the way and still fit them in here necessarily. So we'll see how that goes. Hi, Bev. Thanks for joining us. So if you want to craft along with me, this project takes 7 pieces of 8.5 by 11 cardstock. Definitely feel free to just hang out if you want to just hang out and chat. If you guys want, oh, here, let me take a drink here. Excuse me. So, for this particular project, it starts out with the 7 pieces of 8.5 by 11, and the first one is just 8.5 by 11. I have my scoring tools here. I like to use this one for this scoreboard. It's one of the dollar store stylus tools that you get from Crafters. Is it Crafter Square? And it really It has two different ends, so it has a small one and a large one. And I really like the way this large one kind of lays in the groove in this particular scoreboard. Excuse me, I have Diet Coke bubbles. Is anyone have a chance to do some crafting today or this weekend at all? So I'm going to go ahead and start with my 8.5 by 11. This is sheet number 1. And we are just going to score at 6 inches and 8.25 inches. So 6. And then 8.25. And this is just the right side of the spine and the flap. So I'm going to score and burnish that. I already scored it. I'm going to burnish that. And I'll bring the book over again, kind of show you which piece this is. So this piece is like this. I don't know if you can see all of that, but it's this flap and this spine part and the back piece. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, is that right? Oh, did I do 8.5 or 8.25? I'm gonna check my work. Please stand by. Yep. 6 inches and 8.25. So I'm going to set this one aside and we're just going to score the next one, but first we have to cut it. So our next piece is 8.5 by 9.25. So I'm actually making this mini album to put in my magical adventure in magical something. The Echo Park lines that are Disneyland color themed and happen to have, you know, all the Disney things except for Disney on them. I am gonna go to Disneyland when I am out visiting Rose in just a few weeks. So I'm gonna cut this down to 9.25. So now I have 8.25 by I have 8.5 by 9.25. And this one, we're just going to score at 1 inch. And 3.25 inches. If you don't have a scoreboard and you're playing along and you have a trimmer, some trimmers have a scoring blade. Fiskars, it would be the black blade. And you just line your paper up, you know, at the cut line, and that becomes your score line, and that black blade is just blunt, so it doesn't cut. But if you don't have one of those blades and you have a trimmer, you can also just open up your paper trimmer and use the spot there to score your paper. You just need some sort of a scoring tool, a stylus. You could use the back of a butter knife if you had to. And so I'm going to go ahead and score these guys. Just going to move this out of the way for a minute. So we scored it at 1 inch and 3 1/4 inches, but I'm going to flip it over so that we can just take this 1 inch little tab portion here and glue it to this section. So we're going to lay it in. And actually, you know, you can do it either way. You can do it on top or underneath. You just want to make sure that you have it in this fashion, so that you have the front cover here and then the flap over here. And so I am just going to put glue in this section, and I'm going to lay the paper right into that score line, just right next to it, not over it, not overlapping it, because we want to make sure that our paper will fold. So I'm gonna grab my glue. Just filled up my glue bottle. So last week, I did a whole video for Christmas in July that was, the theme was posh. So I was trying to do fancy cards, and I did this whole thing in my video on what makes a card a little more fancy versus you know, super posh. And then there was the voiceover didn't render somehow, so no one got to hear all my jokes, so I'm really kind of disappointed about that. So I just glued that, made sure that it was stuck in there. You can see that it folds and it's semi-aligned. So that was page 1 and page 2. Only page 2 was like this, technically, upside down. So the next thing we're going to do is score the pages. I'm just trying to grab 4 sheets of cardstock and my thumb's not working. So there are 4 pages, and we're just going to take 8.5 by 11 sheets and score them down the middle at 5.5 for each one. And so while I scored or burnished these, I'll talk a little bit about the spine, the hinges that we're about to make. And the hinges look overwhelming when you're doing all the scoring if you haven't done them before. So I know that when I first made one, I just took my time, and I'm not sure who I was watching on YouTube at the time, but I just paused the video and you know, just kind of took my time. What I tried to do this time is a couple of things for this particular video, for this particular tutorial that I'll be also doing in a video, I think on Saturday, is that I tried to make the scoring wide and the sections wide so that they're easy to grab a hold of and easy to glue and easy to see as I'm explaining the process. So I'm just going to set my pages aside. And, oh, here we go. And this one is 8.5 by 10.25, so I have to do a little bit of trimming here. This is an 11.5 wide sheet, so I'm going to take off 3/4 of an inch. So now our piece of cardstock is 8.5 by 10.25. And on the 10.25 side, we're going to go ahead and score. And these are the dimensions. I have them in Sharpie here, but they're kind of hard to read. So I wrote them in pen here if you want to screenshot it and blow it up if that's your fancy. So I am going to score at 1/2 inch. I can keep my scoring tool in the channel here. And then I'm going to do 1.5 and 2.5. And you see I have my score marks listed here in sets of 3. Now I'm going to do 3 inches, 4 inches, and 5 inches. And then 5.5, 6.5, 7.5, and then 8, 9, and 10. 8, 9, and 10. So essentially what we have here is a 1/2 inch piece, and then we have a 1 inch tab that we're going to glue our page to, another 1/2 inch, and a 1 inch tab that we'll glue our page to. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to fold and burnish these. And right now I'm not really going to worry about what direction I'm folding all of my lines in. I'm just trying to crease the paper at all of these score marks. And this is really the hardest thing that part of this album, and it is probably not the easiest binding system, but at the end of the day, I do make a lot of albums that don't use this system, and I make a lot of accordion albums because those are really easy and you don't have to worry about the binding so much. But this one, I always like the way it looks, and the added stability it gives to the spine of the book. And again, I'm just kind of scoring all of these and not worrying about what direction they're in right now. And then you'll notice at the very end here, instead of having a 1/2 inch, I've got a little 1/4 of an inch piece. And that really is just to kind of secure this last page. And you'll see that when we glue it down. So everywhere we have 2 1-inch pieces next to each other, we're going to glue those 2 together and point them up. So we're going to do the same thing. There's a 1/2 inch one, so that's going to lay flat, but then I have 2 inch marks. I'm going to glue those together and point them up. Same thing, got a 1/2 inch and 2 1 inch, so I'm going to glue those together and point them up, and then the same thing with this last one. So we will end up with something that looks like this. And that's going to be the hinges for our pages. So I'm going to go ahead and glue these down together. If you happen to be playing along and you have any questions, let me know. You can definitely use dry adhesive for this. I tend to use wet glue for almost everything right now. But you do you and use what you got. You can use a glue stick if that's what you have. Oh, I was attending the Card Makers Success Summit this weekend, and I won some Tombow products. I won a permanent adhesive, so their little runner. I'm not sure what it's called. So here I just glued those 2 pieces together and got a little hinge. I'm going to do the same now. I'm going to glue these 2 1-inch pieces together to make the next hinge. I won the permanent adhesive, and then I won 2 glue sticks, and they're alcohol markers in the green shades. So I haven't used their alcohol markers before, so I'm excited to use those, but I'm also interested in using the glue stick. I don't know anyone who really uses glue stick for crafting. I use it. I have some, But I think that mostly it sits and I end up throwing it out. But I really love this particular wet glue too, so maybe that's why. So now I have this last one. I have the two 1-inch pieces, and I'm going to glue them together from the back to make another hinge. So there it is, a little spine. Now let me show you why I have this 1/2 inch and then this just little 1/4 inch on this side. It does seem pretty random, but if you're watching on replay too, when you have any questions, put them in the comment section, and I usually respond to comments the same day, sometimes the next day. So I decided, if you've seen my previous tutorials on mini albums, I really like to have a lot of room to put a lot of chunky stuff, ephemera, you know, receipts, random things that you pick up when you're on vacation, those little coins that you stamp the names in and stuff, when you can find them, the pressed pennies. But I really like to have a lot of room, so this particular album has a 1/2 inch section in front of every page. So that's how I decided the on the different score lines for this binding. I have 1/2 inch in a page and 1/2 inch in a page. And then when I got to the end, I felt like I didn't need a ton of room back here. So the only reason this has this 1/4 inch little section is because I wanted to make sure that this whole piece is glued down correctly, and that it doesn't, I didn't want it to end with just the up part of the page. I wanted to make sure that I had a little security on this side. So now I'm bringing in the rest of my book. I'm moving out my scoreboard. And what I'm going to do before I before I glue this down, is I'm going to go ahead and miter these. So I'm just going to cut a little bit off at an angle so that when we glue our pages down, there's not a ton of bulk at the top or the bottom. Let me show you. And I'm just going to eyeball this and do it one at a time. I just set the scissors in here and cut in about 1/4 inch or so. And I do that on each page, on the top and the bottom. And really, it's kind of the cheater method because you also don't have to worry about if it's a tiny bit off at the top or the bottom when you glue your page down, because it'll look pretty seamless. So I'm going to do the same thing on here. And here. So I think the key to getting this this binding system is to start with large sections. You don't want to do 1/4 inch gusset and 1/4 inch page hinges because they're tiny, and then you have to do all this smashing and all of this thin, and then you just like you want to have to put a tiny bit of glue in there and it gets everywhere. So that's why I do it this way, especially for an album like this where I'm not going to use a lot of pages. So I'm going to go ahead and glue this down now. And the only thing that I'm going to worry about here first is this 1/2 inch piece, and I'm just going to glue this 1/2 inch piece down first. And just like we did our pages, just like we did our cover, I'm just going to put this 1/2 inch piece right into the front part of this score line, and I am just going to start with gluing down this one section. That made it easier for me to line up. There's not glue over everything. It's not going to fall down the wrong way and you have to like pull the whole thing up. So I'm just going to start with this one section. Ooh, that is a lot of glue. And line it up. And it's kind of hard to see at this angle, but I think that'll do it. Sometimes I pick up the page just so I see where the lines are. Sometimes it's hard to see the score lines unless there's a shadow. So I'm going to go ahead and burnish this down and stand it up, and I think it looks pretty good. So now that I have that down and I like where it is, I'm going to go ahead and just put a bunch of glue here to glue down the rest of our spine hinge binding. Just want to make sure to get a line down this end. Now, sometimes when you glue, or I'm sorry, when you fold and burnish and glue, your size will be just a little different than you wanted it to be, of course. So now is the chance to kind of take a look and make sure that your page is going to fit and this little spine piece is going to fit, and I don't think it's going to fit. Mine is off a little bit. Based on the math that I used, it should be just fine. So I'll just go ahead and cut a little bit of this off if it gets in the way of my of the book folding. But you can also just go ahead and kind of massage your paper so that it kind of just bends and has a score mark in the same place that this score mark is. So And that's probably what I'll do because I really do want the security of this extra little glued piece. So I'm just gonna kind of work it up, give it a second to dry, and then I'll just really fold it down. But now we have a spot to put our 4 pages. So I'm going to give that a second. Again, if you just joined, I have the measurements for all of the pages and the step-by-step if you want to watch the replay. And of course, if you have questions, if you're putting it together, always put your questions in the comments and I'll respond to those as quickly as I can. I'm going to go ahead and do a couple things here. I'm going to go ahead and bend these both ways. What I really like about this kind of binding is that you really get pages. Oh, well, that was not a good example. But you really get pages that sit down, and sometimes with different types of binding, they don't sit down very well. So try to just score these back and forth. Now we have our pages. Now these are the ones that we did not cut. They're 8.5 by 11 and we just scored them in half at 5.5. And so what I did to make this easier for me is I went ahead and just glued one section at a time, really. So I just lay the page in here, and what we're going to end up with is gluing both of these sides to this hinge. And if you want a top loading pocket, you will only put glue across the bottom and the sides of the page, and of course not in the middle, so you have your pocket. If you don't want that, then you can definitely do this by just gluing the entire inside down. The other thing you can do if you want to is you can just use a half a sheet of paper and glue to the tab. Doing it this way creates a situation where there aren't a lot more seams that you have to worry about when you're covering your pages. But if you're going to cover your pages, if you use a half a sheet and you have a seam, no one's going to notice once you put your designer paper on there. So to do this, I just went ahead and first glued down the section. I just kind of line the paper up, the top and bottom of the book, and put it right into that fold and lay it down. And this is also a reason that I do this, is to kind of make sure that I can see where the page lands and make sure that it's lined up right. Oop. So if you notice, this is also a way to make an interactive page. I didn't do any like this time, but I've done that in other albums. Also, now that we have this entire piece glued to one side of the page, we don't necessarily need to put glue on this entire side of the tab to glue this piece down. That's going to cut into the room for your pocket if you're worried about that at all. Of course, you want it glued down to either the front or the back side of the inside of the page, just because you don't want it to catch if you're putting a tag or something else in the pockets. So now is when I just do a bead of glue along the seam here and then across the bottom. And then that we just do for all 4 of the pages. You want to make sure that you stand up your page and make sure that it is flat, that it's not bunched up at some point, and so you don't want this to kind of bow or buckle, a bow. And that's that. So I really do think that this is a 30-minute mini album, except if you're trying to kind of explain your process as you go. So now I'm just gluing this one in, laying this piece down, checking that it's lined up at the top and the bottom again. And so there are some pieces to this project that are kind of extras. So let me show you that as soon as I'm done with these other 2. Next, and actually the Brutus Monroe mixed media tags, if you have any of those, will fit in here nicely. But I will just go ahead and when I'm done with, whoop, that's crooked. Whoop, there we go. I don't know if you guys are on the Brutus Monroe email list, but I did receive an email today that they are clearancing some of their cardstock and the matching envelopes. There's some A2 and some slimline. They're my favorite colored cardstock. I haven't, of course, tried all of the colored cardstock, but they are really good quality, and you can get 20 sheets for under $5, which is a pretty good deal. I mean, I do try to buy in bulk whenever I buy white or black cardstock because I use those the most. But for colored cardstock, I really like to splurge on that when I can. Oh, whoops. I glued the whole thing. Well, it's going to be bad. All right. So the other thing that I did that I haven't done here is I put a pocket in the front of this one, and this pocket is just 6 inches by 4 inches. So I just did one sheet or one piece of the white cardstock and then, you know, glued it on 3 sides. This back here has 2 pockets, and what I did is I put the white cardstock down. They are 6 inches by 2.5 inches. This one looks wider than 2.5 inches because the pocket starts about here. And when I was layering up this cardstock, I just liked the look of having it just lay right across the top. And these started out as A2 card bases, but they were too long. So I went ahead and cut them down just a little bit. And then the last thing that I added was this. And if you want to do something like this where you make a middle pocket for a tag or a photo mat or something else, I would suggest you do it ahead of time and go ahead and glue it in. There's about a half inch or an inch here that I went ahead and glued down. And this is one sheet of 8.5. It was 8.5 by 5, and then I scored it in half to be 4.25, and that'll all be in the instructions. So, and then I just glued down a section of it, but that's extra. I went ahead also and I made a little accordion, and I wanted to get the basic matting down first before I glue my accordion on, because what I'm going to do is go ahead and mat underneath it and then mat all the pieces so it looks kind of seamless once I'm done. So, and I think I'm going to go ahead and put a little like a strap or something that's magnetized so you can lift it up and pull this out. I don't think it's going to be a big deal if I don't. This, you know, mini album is not going to be something, it's not like a library book where hundreds of people are going to open and close it. So I'm just going to decide that once I get it matted and have some photo mats on top and kind of decide how bulky it is. And that's that. So, let me take you on a quick tour of what I'm going to use to mat my pages for this book. A lot of different companies have Disney themed, but not Disney themed paper. And so this one is from Scrapbook Custom. So this is scrapbook.com's paper. And I just really bought this so I would have all of these little sentiments to cut out. I don't know that I would use this many in a book, but I can put the rest aside. I think it's funny that this one just has all dollar signs on it. And has all kinds of stuff. My Goofy Kids, 100% Pure Happiness, highlights, so really scrapbooky kind of things. Let's see. This one is single-sided. And then I have from Magical Place, I've got this one. And basically I just picked up a few pieces of some of these things from scrapbook.com as I would put orders in. You know, I also kind of like the fact that you get a 12 by 12 piece of chipboard for free when you order a 12 by 12 paper. So use that to my advantage. This is the cutest thing ever. All the little bow ties. And so I have a couple sheets of that, and that's just stripes on the back. This one is Simple Stories. So it's got some dots, and then it's got just some magic. This is the Say Cheese line. So I think it's cheese like photo and also Mickey like mouse. And then I just have a couple of these other things. I got this in a Echo Park warehouse box. It really is not the colors that I love, but I figured there might be something in here that I could use. Also, got some chipboard pieces. And so I'll probably use one of these frames on the front of the mini album. This is a tissue paper that I saved from when I ordered from shop.disney. It's got all the little characters on it. So I'm going to use that for something. Then I have a couple of Cricut Disney things. I haven't even opened these yet, but these ones were on clearance one time, and so I picked them up. And of course I love Alice in Wonderland. And then a few weeks or so ago, maybe a couple months ago, Isaac brought home from a thrift store a whole bag of 12 by 12 paper. It was like this thick, and it had a bunch of these vintagey Disney themed papers. They're Walt Disney World and Disney Cruise, but you know, I'm just gonna cut that part off. But they're really fun. I hadn't, I think, seen this paper at the time that it was out. You can see that all of the adhesive is done. I don't even know if these are archival, but I don't really worry about that too much. There were some sticker sheets, some other pages, so some really fun stuff. And then there was a bunch of that, and then I have a couple of these. And this one is Magical Adventure from Echo Park. So I know that that's a lot of paper, and I'm not going to be able to fit all of this paper into one mini album, but I'm going to give it a shot. Not really. Just going to figure out what fits. I don't know. I think that at some point I'm going to do a whole album with all of this vintage paper. I mean, it's vintage, but it's not, you know, maybe it's 20 years old. Like, this one is really fun. I really like this one. It's glossy. Hi, Bonnie. How are you? Thanks for joining. Let me show you what I did. Oh, and then I have these sprinklets. So I don't know if you can see them, but they're little mouse face ear things. I'll have to make a shaker maybe on the front cover so that I can put these in. So here is, I just love Disney stuff. So I made this little book, Bonnie, because I'm going to decorate it with the Disney paper because I'm going on vacation to visit Rose, and I'm going to go to Disneyland while I'm there. And so I made this little album. It's a little wonky, but it is like this album. This is the Outdoors, I think. Is it Outdoors by Stephen Duncan, or by Cartabella, but by Stephen Duncan. Of course, Stephen Duncan's my favorite. And so this one, I'm going to, you can see this completed album with all the decoration and probably photos in it on my video on Saturday. And then, of course, that will also include the step-by-step how-to of this project. Here's one that's completed, and it's in the same style, only it has more pages. But this is where, this was the first book that I designed by myself. It's the first time that I really used any interactive things in a book that that wasn't, you know, a paper bag or envelope album. I put a waterfall. I thought that was really fancy, and then some little flappy things. And then the rest of this paper I actually used to create my planner covers. I use the Happy Planner system, and I have a mini, but I also have the punch. So I made my own like covers and dashboards and stuff from this paper line because I like it so much. It's the P13 Garden of Books. I don't know that they still, if it's still in retail. I don't think it is. So I think that if you make this album, at this point you want to decide whether you want to round your corners or not. And then decide if you want to put magnets in the front. I try to put the magnets in before I cover the pages, but I don't always end up doing that. And I did time myself on my last one, and it took about 30 minutes. I think that if you're new to the binding, it might take a few extra minutes, but hopefully if you're watching video, you can just pause it and follow along. And I think that's everything I got for you today. Next week, I think I'm going to take those card panels that I made last week with all the sprays and the ink everywhere, and I'm still finding ink on things, and make some cards out of them. I have some new dies that I want to use, new to me, and I'll probably do that next week if you guys want to hang out and play along. I am done. I'm sorry, Bonnie. We can hang out for a while, though. What do you want to talk about? Want to talk about mermaids or unicorns?
done with mermaids forever? Oh, but still unicorns, right? But unicorns forever. Are you into Hello Kitty now? I have like only 2 Hello Kitty things in my entire stash. So I'm going to have to Google how to... I wonder if does Cricket have Hello Kitty stuff? Because I could totally make stuff out of Cricket. I crochet as well, but I can make scarves and hats, and that's about it. Well, thanks everyone for joining. If you have a second before we sign out, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that helps my channel. And hopefully next week I will be able to gather all of those pieces. I think I still have some ink blended pieces from the week before as well, when I was doing the water stamping, that I'll make some cards out of as well, unless I use those for a video this week. So I am not good at granny squares. I have a Chris blanket that is like 1/3 of the way made, and then I have a Mikey blanket that is also 1/3 of the way made. And I haven't been doing crochet since I started making my stuff for my YouTube channel. So I don't know. I guess I could bring it with me though. Oh, that sounds really fun though, Bunny. I can do a square. Thanks everybody for joining me. Sorry we didn't get to spend too much time together, Bonnie. Everyone have a great night. I hope you enjoyed this one. If you're catching it on the replay, I'm just rambling now, so. Don't be sorry, Bonnie. It's all good. Everyone have a good night.